combat crew training, and in January of 1967 was assigned to the 480th Tactical Fighter Squadron at Da Nang Air Base in the Republic of Vietnam. On July 6th of the same year, Lieutenant Pollock flew his 78th combat mission, in which he led his flight in a precision attack with anti-aircraft artillery fire and delivered all of the flight's ordnance on target before being forced to eject over North Vietnam. He was captured and held as a prisoner of war until he was released during Operation Homecoming on March 4th, 1973. After recovering at the Westover Air Force Base in Massachusetts, he was back in the air, this time as an instructor pilot with the 308th Tactical Fighter Squadron of the 31st Tactical Fighter Wing, stationed in Florida at the Homestead Air Force Base. He then served as an instructor pilot with the 549th Tactical Air Support Training at Patrick Air Force Base in Florida, and then as the Director of Contracting and Support for the Eastern Space Missile Site before retiring from the Air Force on December 1st, 1984. As a civilian, Mel embarked on what would become a successful 22-year career in the international aviation industry. During this time, Mel took part in many Department of Defense contracts, including space launch, tracking orbital debris, destroying chemical and biological weapons, maintaining classified aircraft, and Army missile programs. He also worked with airport and aerospace programs in China, Nepal, Mongolia, Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore, and India. Today, as the president of Vets Helping Heroes, Mel uses his military experience and organizational expertise to improve the lives of current and retired service members. The nonprofit organization helps provide service dogs for both active duty military and veterans so that they can better navigate the physical and psychological challenges that have resulted from their service. As if these contributions to society weren't enough, Mel also serves on the board of members for the Boca Raton Airport Authority and is a past board chair. His unmatched knowledge of the aviation industry and his unwavering commitment to the community has made him an integral part of the airport and the city of Boca Raton. Melvin Pollock, we thank you for your service and wish you a happy 80th birthday from your friends at the Boca Raton Airport.
Thank you. Thank you.
So many people see and the chairman, I'm very happy and healthy 80th birthday. You served our nation so heroically, and you continue to serve in so many ways in our community, including your role as the Boca Raton Airport Authority and your role as president of Heroes Helping Vets. We're so grateful for your continued advocacy and service, and wish you and your family many blessings on the celebration of your birthday and for years to come. Thanks for all you do, and happy birthday.
Oh, I'm going home.
Happy 80th birthday, Mel. I want to wish you all the best.
Yeah.
I wish you all the best for many years to come. It's great working with you. True American hero. God bless you.
Hi, Mel. Happy birthday.
Who's that?
Really enjoyed it. You contributed so much to your family, but more than that, I want to thank you for your contributions to the airport authority, to the community, and to our country. Have a great day.
No.
You're looking great for man, your condition. Happy birthday, Mel. Hey, Mel, just want to wish you a very happy 80th birthday. Can't believe you're 80, you don't look older than 65. Years. You set a great example for us on a lot of levels. You set the bar very high. I hope that I can be as good as you are when I'm 80 years old. And it looks like you got at least another 20 years on you. So happy 80th birthday. Congratulations. Look forward to working with you for a long time. Hey Mel, happy 80th. I know I've only known you for 5 or 6 years, but it's really been a pleasure to get to know you. Thanks for your service to our country and enjoy your 80th birthday.
We love you.
Happy birthday, Mel. From Louis Long Walker. Happy birthday, Mel.
Hey Mel, you probably have noticed by now, I'm not sitting next to you at IKEA. In fact, I am on my way back from a business trip in Mexico. But if I were there, I would tell you, first of all, happy birthday. And second of all, I would tell you how wonderful and inspiring it has been for me over the last couple of years. We heard about the great service that you made. And now that kind of service that you're making to our community is really extraordinary and very inspiring. So I learned a lot about that's helping heroes over the last year or so, especially when we were at the retail meeting. And I'm proud now to present a contribution of $5,000. The real check right here.
I've been asked to say a few words about my dear friend and Air Force colleague, comrade, Lieutenant Colonel Mel Pollock. And have you ever heard of having a reunion with someone that you've never met before? That actually happened to Mel and me. To start this story where it begins, July 6, 1967, Mel was flying what he thought was his 78th and final mission over the unfriendly skies of North Vietnam and got shot down. The next day, I, a young Air Force captain, was called into my commander's office and asked to go inform the parents that their son was missing in action. And there began our story. We're going to flash forward a few years. I didn't know whether Mel was dead or alive. And it turned out in 1973, when Walter Cronkite was announcing the list of returning POWs, there was Mel's name. And I was thrilled to know that he was still alive. Moving even further forward, I learned that Mel was not only alive, but was doing very well and was living in Delray Beach, which was only 5 minutes from where I lived. Well, I had the reunion with Mel. We've been friends ever since. He's a great fellow. I love Mel. I love his family and Sheila. And I want to wish you a very happy 80th birthday, old friend. Many more.
Mel, thank you for all your years of service with Boca Raton Aircraft Authority, for your business on the Saturdays for our IPO. And happy birthday, Mel!
Mel, my very best wishes for your 80th birthday. You deserve good health and happiness in the military service, and now for Vets Helping Heroes as president to help disabled veterans. Happy birthday.
Hey Mel, Lisa here, wishing you a happy 80th birthday. I hope that your new birthday year is full of only wonderful things. I am so grateful to work with you every day, and I appreciate you more than ever. Happy birthday, Mel.
I just want to tell you that I love you very, very much. We've known each other over 16 years now, been married 4.5 years, and pretty soon is your birthday. So I want to wish you a happy, happy, happy early birthday. Love you.
Hi, Mel. On behalf of myself and my family, we want to wish you a happy birthday. Thank you for everything you have done for our country and continue doing. And remember, fast forward, Mach 2.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear.
Joy and I wish you a very happy 80th birthday.
Hey, well, Bob Engelman at Latte. I want to wish you a happy birthday. And I want to add the honor it's been to serve with you. Board of Directors for Vets Helping Heroes.
Thank you.
There's one more thing.
You got it good.
Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge us for one
Yes,
more minute.
please.
So Bob Tucker challenged us with a match for Vets Helping Heroes. So we wanted to present you
Wow.
with a match.
All I can say is, first of all, thank you all very much. And you really sandbagged. Everybody, nobody even hinted at this. Somebody deserves an award for not talking. Sheila will talk later.
I'm going out to dinner with my So we invite everyone to have a little chocolate.
Yes, help yourself to a cupcake, a birthday cupcake.
Now you have to look at the top.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Let me go say.
You do that.
Exciting.
Very nice.
Linda.
Oh, yeah. I cried more than Mel. You saw.
Thank you. I have a song. I could do it, Melanie. You're all welcome to stay as long as you want. Yes. Once a month, we try to work together, that's for help. That's helping heroes.
Air Force.
Wow.
This is from the mayor.
Sorry.
This is a proclamation from the mayor.
You're good. Do what you need to do.
Always go, I'll let the guests go.
They can stay as long as they want. All right, we're gonna reconvene the meeting, but you can stay as long as you want.
Well, grab it,
You rest, take a
cupcake.
cupcake.
Gotta see these cupcakes.
But one more thing before you leave, we have here a commendation from our mayor. Mayor Scott Singer, you heard him speaking to it earlier. And so Mel, well deserved. And I can read it if you would like, for
Please.
everybody. On behalf of the city of Boca Raton, it's, I mean, it's a mental gift.
You read? You read.
You want me to give it over here, Jim?
Dear Mel, on behalf of the city of Boca Raton, it's my distinct pleasure to congratulate you on the occasion of your 80th birthday. In reaching this auspicious age, you have witnessed incredible changes and lived the kind of life that has made you an inspiration to your friends and family. May you find many more happy occasions to share with them. Your heroic service to our nation, work on our community institutions, and your active volunteer roles are credits to Boca Raton. As president of Vets Helping Heroes, you continue to serve others who have, like you, valiantly protected our freedom and way of life. You are truly an inspiration. We join your colleagues on the Boca Raton Airport Authority, wishing you the best to you and your family for many more years of health and happiness. Sincerely, your Scott Singer. Amen.
And on that,
Pop that.
yeah. Can't. Cannot.
I officially feel like
Yeah. Okay, what did you do for your first day?
I'm only 60 this year. I got 20 years to go.
Good. I guess we all better get going.
Get some.
What's the top of the cupcakes? Air Force.
I gotta go turn my headlights off now.
Really not. That's really not.
It's she, because she's on medical leave, she has to be like.
We do have an airport. So I should have took a banner. Exactly. So I have to miss that meeting. Circulate that. I would
I would ask. Thank you, everybody. So much.
Yeah. Cheryl, the coach having sit down and
Very nice.
Good job. We're gonna find out.
I'm sure.
I guess they really sandbagged me, huh?
It's so easy. It was so easy.
The wall was full.
All right, sorry to hold up our meeting.
Oh, come on. It's always so joyful.
But that was a surprise.
You should always.
Nice to see you again. You can ask for coffee at the beginning, and at the end, it's during, and at the end, because they expanded a while ago.
Struggles.
That'll
keep you rolling.
Yeah.
At every public meeting. Introduce me.
This is my older daughter, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy, Randy Nobles.
You know Cheryl.
Cheryl, and one of the, hey,
I must say, and it's not gonna sound creepy, I watch you guys every week.
Okay.
I hear about it when I get
So
home.
we know there's one.
Yeah. So you're the one who's watching.
We're gonna try harder. We have to work names. Smarty, Sleepy. Yeah.
I'm joking, I'm okay. I'm okay with it.
That would be me.
All right.
Yeah.
No.
I need a shower.
Then you
All right, we'll call the meeting back to order. Let's do first then the approval of minutes from the February 16th, 2022 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved. What is this about the November 17th meeting? Is that just a carryover? Okay. I fell for that the last meeting. Okay, any changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
All right. If any member of the public wishes to provide a comment on any item, the time to do so is now. Please complete a public comment card identifying the item upon which you wish to be heard and provide it to Ms. Landers. The public comment cards are located in the back of the room. Each member of the public wishing to comment will be provided with 5 minutes to do so. The chair reserves the right to move the public comment opportunity on a specific agenda item to the point in the agenda when the item is to be considered and or to extend the allotted time per speaker. I have one comment card. Are there any other comment cards? All right, at this time, we do have one comment card from Mr. Jim Hopkins, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Senior Vice President of Airport Relations at Signature Flight Support, and he wants to introduce the new Signature Flight Support ownership to the Airport Authority. So with that, Jim, wherever you feel comfortable. But yeah, we are being recorded, so probably the microphone is the best spot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Jim Hopkins, Senior Vice President of Airport Relations for Signature Flight Support. It's great to be here, Mr. Pollack. We have 145 locations in North America, and I will tell you that I have never seen such praise or approbation to anyone such as yourself. It's airports just don't do that, and I go to a lot of airport meetings. So congratulations, and it's wonderful, and you're well thought of.
Thank you.
Really exciting news for us, and we're getting out and we're spreading the word that Signature Flight Support in 2021 was sold to a new consortium of owners. We were owned and publicly traded on the FTSE network in the United Kingdom. We now are owned by a consortium of owners in the United States, namely Blackstone, which is the world's largest holder of real estate, Global Infrastructure Partners, and also Cascade Investments, which is the Bill Gates Trust. It's great for us because not being a publicly traded company, suddenly we're very nimble. We move very quickly. Monies are at hand. You may have heard that we just recently purchased the Vail Valley Jet Center in Vail, Colorado, which was a major acquisition. And in the next couple of days, you're going to hear of another major network acquisition that has FBOs throughout the country. And we're very excited about that. What does that mean? The cash is readily available. Obviously, it's a good economy. Airport operations are growing, and we are seeking opportunities to grow in airports across the country. We have over $70 million in process right now, building facilities. We've just finished brand new facilities in Nashville, in Cleveland. Brand new facility is wonderful in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're working on others. We'd love nothing more than opportunities to expand here at Boca Raton if there were such properties available. We have tens of millions of dollars ready to go. It's a wonderful airport, and I tell you, we track airport operations as they grow, and not every airport is growing, especially general aviation airports. Actually, most are shrinking and declining. So the growth you've seen here speaks to our interests, and we greatly appreciate the opportunity to serve you, and hopefully we can grow with you as time goes on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And there is a week behind. I see a handout for anybody. Anybody have any questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Exciting times. Exciting times. Yeah.
Okay, next item, consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda?
No, sir.
And federal and municipal and state input. Any input?
There is none.
Okay. All right, next item, number 8, is a financial report. Presentation of February 2022 financial report. And Randy, I guess I'll turn it over to you as Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah, and I'll just turn it over to Jada.
Okay, Jada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Treasurer, Jada Stewart, Accounting Manager. In your package is the financial report through February 28, 2022. As you can see, total operating revenues year to date are approximately $2.6 million. Total operating expenses year to date are approximately $1.4 million. And net income before depreciation is approximately $1 million. Overall revenues are 3.6% above budget year to date, primarily due to the seasonal nature of fuel flowage and custom revenue. Expenses are down approximately 39.6% to budget year to date due to project expenses incurred but not yet received. On behalf of Airport Management and the Secretary Treasurer, we respectfully present the February 2022 financial report to the Airport Authority.
Thank you, Jada. Any comments or questions? Looks good. Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the February 22 financial report. Any other questions, comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved. Thank you, Jada. Appreciate that. Next is our tenant reports and requests. And we have Premier Aviation of Boca Raton, their phase 3 request for a time extension. So Ms. Bennett, I turn it over to you. introduce this item?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Chair, as indicated in the background material, we have received correspondence from Premier Aviation that they're in the process of obtaining the required permits for the phase 3 development. However, they have not been able to complete that process as of yet as prescribed in the lease. And they are requesting an extension of that timeline relative to the permit application and the receipt of such permits for another 6 months. We have some representatives from Premier Aviation here. I'd like to introduce yourself in case the board has any questions directly. We also have before you some information that we have requested from Premier regarding the process with the city of what had been applied for and when. Because again, there are timelines that are prescribed in the lease agreement that are where the request is to extend those. So we received this afternoon. From our reading of it, there was an application that was made in December 7th, I believe. And that was for a land use amendment. And again, the deadline for the lease was last week, but they're asking for an extension of 6 months additional time to get those permits in place.
So do I understand the right the city's had it since December 7th to review these, or who else? All right, we'll let you. Yeah. Please introduce yourself. You can maybe best by the microphone so for recording purposes.
So thank you for letting me speak here today. My name is Howard Dubasar. I represent Premier. When I came here today, I thought the fun part was going to be a high school reunion with my friend Mitch Hogan. What a great presentation. I said to Janice, why didn't you tell me to bring tissues? Congratulations on the illustrious career.
Thank you.
All right. As far as the business, what they went in for was site plan approval because the site plan had expired. As you know, there's been a history of some delays beyond the control commission. Very good about getting extensions requested. If there's any specific questions about the site plan approval process, I brought Lauren Odo from the Dene Miskel firm, who's actually doing that work with the city of Boca Raton right now. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Okay, so then I'll go back to my question, Howard. Is this, so if I understood Claire right, it was submitted December 7th, so it goes to the city and they've had it all this time?
And then they write backwards. They just
oh, so there's been some back and forth. Okay.
Good evening, Laura. So to clarify, we did our original submittal in December of last year. At that point, the city has a week's review. At that point, we received the comments. They asked for an updated survey, updated surveys, and kind of about the latest a good amount to get us overloaded. We resubmitted 2 weeks ago, received comments today, and we anticipated 2 submittals. After that, which should take 2 or 3 months, at 4 weeks, assuming nothing comes up. After that, legal off the application here. Typically, routing to hearing applications final takes about 2 months, and then it'll go to city council because these uses are based on that timeline, that's 6 months ago. And I just would like to say, as of right now, nothing is married. It's just about our cleanup and we're across the size.
And so there was some back and forth. It wasn't that it sat on someone's desk. Okay, board members?
Yeah, just a question on the timeline. This last came before us in September.
September.
What happened between September and December 7th of this, 3-month gap, knowing we have a big sense of urgency around this, and it took 3 months to get it to the city?
So it's my understanding that for revised when you process a site plan application, elevations have to match exactly what's proposed. I believe that was finalized September, I believe it took 1 month and a half to work on that. The city has a preliminary process you have to go through. By the time it was submitted, it was really.
I was going to say one other thing that we're doing is you can typically get site plan approval and then apply for permits, but there's certain permits that you can apply for simultaneously. And we're doing that to try and expedite the process.
I mean, the gap just seems, you know, I hear you on the elevation and everything, it just, I mean, we have a sense of urgency, I think, that's been expressed, you know, numerous times here, and it just doesn't feel like to me that that's, you know, on the other side as well.
It should come as no surprise that Premier has the same sense of urgency, because if they don't get building up, they don't make money. So they do share that sense of urgency. I don't think I need to get into the history of the delays and who may have caused those. You know, that's under the bridge. But the fact of the matter is they're working expeditiously to get this done. Any questions?
Yeah, I will. So if you don't get the approval, what's plan D?
David.
I have to defer to Howard on that in terms of the alternative uses. That's something that I haven't discussed.
Yeah, not.
Okay, so you guys are committed to absolutely get this done within, if we grant the extra 6 months, what kind of comfort can you give the board if you're asking for the 6 months that would make us feel good about giving the 6 months?
Well, number one, everybody benefits from what the approval of the property. Number two, consider that one of the last extensions was necessary in order for us to come up with what the new rent was going to be on the extension of the lease. Once that was put in place, Premier closed out its or obtained its financing so that it could do this construction and has a tenant in place based on that. So this is an all systems go kind of project. It's going to be a good boost for thinking.
Was there a tenant?
When you say they, you mean Premier or the city?
No, Premier. Okay. No. The city just has to approve the site plan permits.
It looks like you have most of the approvals. But this last hoop.
Because the prior site plan expired, they had to go through this process again. You know, basically, it's more like a 3 or 4 month timeline, but conservative, so I asked for 6 months. One plans.
A question, please.
Yes.
Ms. Bennett. At what point do we run into trouble, if you will, with the FAA and what their requirements in terms of timetables for this construction?
Well, the FAA has reviewed the existing timeline and has approved that. So any amendment to the or any change to the timeline that was approved would have to go back to FAA for approval. So if there's a 6 month extension granted, that would require a lease amendment, which would have to go to FAA for approval. In correspondence with FAA, they've expressed frustration that this process hasn't been completed and that there have been such a long number of extensions. Their last correspondence indicated that they were not inclined at that time to approve any additional extensions. I think that the biggest concern is having the building constructed and generating revenue for the airport authority that has been deferred for 23 years because of the, when the lease was implemented or effective. So it's unknown what the FAA's position will be, but I think based on their last correspondence, they're very concerned about that construction date and CO date of August 2023.
No. We're all aware of this. My question is, we talk about a timeline. What has been our experience when we've gone for other extensions for the FAA to give us a decision? Is that a month or 5 months?
It's in terms of the turnaround time for their review.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It can be a few days, it could be a few weeks. It's very difficult to tell. The last interaction that we had with the FAA relative to this lease was over a year ago. When I don't recall, Mr. Pollack, I apologize, the day of the last extent of the last amendment that addressed timelines. But again, that's the one
interaction where they seem to be pretty frustrated with the airport authority, because obviously our compliance is our compliance with the airport authority, and there's compliance on the tenant with the lease.
Just, can you just clarify that they are frustrated with us because we continue to give the extensions?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay, and what is a not pretty ending to that?
Well, I think,
a worst case scenario from a business perspective, what could happen if the FAA says, we've already told you, enough is enough, whatever the reasons, whoever wants to point fingers, let's just, as you said, put this on the side burner, because believe me, we're not all thrilled about those either. What could happen? FAA comes back and says, I told you we had enough, we've had enough.
well, every amendment that we do has the caveat of subject to FAA approval. So this one would have the same language. So we would submit it to the FAA for their review and approval. If FAA objects and says, we do not concur or we have objections, then their expectation would be for us to default, find the lease in default and breach. If we don't do that, then we are not in compliance with the FAA's requirements for the airport authority on how we manage our leases and use the property, so they could find us in non-compliance with our grant assurances and other federal requirements.
Then what happens if they find us in non-compliance?
Typically, any new grants, it's a whole process, and it depends on how much.
Get on record so that everybody is clear what this means to us. If FAA comes back and said, you're not listening to me, airport authority, we think that you have granted too many extensions for whatever reason. Then what happens?
They have the right to withhold grants. They have the right to cut off existing grants. So if any grants that are at federal, we have 2 open federal grants now. They can say we're rescinding those. You can't draw down from those anymore. Then we would not be eligible for any future grants. And again, depending on the nature of the findings and the non-compliance situation, anything from fines all the way up to reverting the airport.
Fines to us.
Fine to us, yes. Again, it's our responsibility.
Have you had any preliminary conversations with FAA that we have yet another extension pending? Upon
No.
we are making a decision.
No, we received this request last week on Wednesday, right before the board mailing. And we wanted to see what would be presented this evening. And we also need to know, we need a direction. That's the request before you, Ms. Budd, is from Airport Legal Counsel, Airport Management, direction from the board as to how to proceed. And then we would proceed accordingly. If that requires an amendment, then we would go to FAA at that point. But no preliminary discussions.
No, go ahead.
What is your candid assessment of FAA's disposition on this? I know you said they had voiced frustration, but on a scale from 1 to 10, how close are we, in 10 being you darn close, to FAA saying, I told you enough is enough, and we are going the next step?
I believe I handed out copies of the email that I received the last time. It seemed pretty adamant to me at the time. Again, it's very difficult to tell, whether things have changed or personnel have changed at the ADO level or district office level. But at the time that request was made, they made it clear that would be the last time that they'd expect to see an extension of time presented by the airport authority. My sense is that, again, the timeline that is the most critical in terms of a compliance perspective is most likely the August 2023, because again, that's the expectation of the building being constructed, revenue being generated on the property as had been intended since the property was put out for RFP.
So let's, two more questions.
Yes,
please. So let's take that road for just a minute. We grant another extension and let's say FAA says, okay, we'll roll with you on this extension. Maybe there's another extension because the world is what it is. And then we get to the point in 2023, is it August? We get to that point and ground has been broken. However, we are not at the stage of a certificate of occupancy. And maybe that comes, I'll just pull a date that, but 6 months later, a year later, for whatever reason. what happens in that interim time? Because at that point, my understanding is that is a line in the sand, that is a bright line that cannot be moved. The August 2023. So we're at August 2023 because we have granted on, extension after extension, assuming that the FAA does not chastise us in the extreme before that period of time. So we get to that point of time, there's a building, the ground has been broken, but clearly there's no CO, there's no revenue. What happens then? You can't go back and say unbuild it.
Well, we'd have to see what Premier's request is at that time and react to that request.
But wouldn't we have a plan that would say, fine, rent starts?
I think that
I know, I guess
like I said,
whether
it would have to be negotiated. Whatever extensions would be required, would be requested at that time, would have to be reviewed.
It seems
and
to me like FAA is really put it down if they hadn't before that time. And one final question, if I may, Mr. Chair. What are the ramifications to our friends here if we say we can't risk losing grants? We can't risk our open grants, we can't risk future grants. And so we say no.
Well, I think technically, and I'll defer to legal counsel, that the deadline was the 7th of March. So technically, there is a breach already that they have the right to cure. So there is a notice period that's given, and there is a right to cure the breach. And so that's what we're kind of trying to work through this evening. But I'll defer to Janice on, specifically that provision in the lease.
Yeah, the language of the lease on the default is that the party has 30 days to cure the default unless it's something that can't be curable in 30 days. So for example, if they're in default for not providing permits, there's unlikely that they'll get them within 30 days. So the lease has a little bit of room that would allow Premier to continue working, be able to continue to cure, as long as I think they give assurances that they're continuing to work on it. So I believe that, in my opinion, I haven't been privy to any FAA negotiations, but I think if FAA sees something coming out of the ground, they would be more inclined to
Be less strident about their position.
Right. And also, I'd have to check the lease. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, one of the remedies could be that the airport would complete the building and then see.
Right. There are construction bonds that are required, so you don't end up with a half a building.
Right.
So you could go to the bond. However, I think what's being requested here, Mr. Dumasar, is just a 6-month extension on the permits. We're not looking to extend the construction port deadlines at all. So that I think there's some comfort there that we can point to if the board were inclined, particularly given.
Wouldn't logic seem to dictate that the further you extend permits,
And the history is not good.
It impacts at some point the construction period. I mean, there is a linear time.
As you mentioned, time is of the essence, given that August 2023, what we interpret, at least based on the FAA's position of kind of the backstop date, the critical date.
Because then you have 11 months to build a building, even if you get all the permits.
I can't even, and the people next door to us have been putting on a roof in a residential place for 11 months.
I do believe that I have to look at the contract again. It's been a while since I've looked at that section. There's a provision that you're in the middle of construction and the phase of construction is built that extension, but I have to check that.
Randy?
Yeah, I mean, my mind is where the road that Cheryl was going down with. We've worked so hard to establish this great relationship with the FAA where, the funding, the reputational risk and everything, was out there. And I do remember the email or the memorandum that you circulated from them last year. And it was rather, strongly worded that, this is the end of the line. And so, should we be in a position knowing where they're at to say, okay, we're passing along to you anyway, even though we told you no, or, highly improbable that we're going to consider anything additional. And again, risks that, stellar reputation. I'm really, really struggling with that.
Gene, did you want to make any comment?
Well, I'll go along with the comments that have already been made. I would go with the recommendations of the board. I think good direction.
Okay, thank you.
And my question that I brought up earlier to go along with yours was, we have a timeline that you gave us, and I was curious, now we have an FAA timeline. It looks like we're trying to close a loop that's very tenuous at best, based on the history. 'Cause I remember that letter, it was rather strong, as I remember correctly, the FAA.
Do we have a legal obligation to give a opportunity to cure here? I mean, do we have to say yes?
Well, no, and you can find them and give them a notice, find them in breach and give them a notice to cure. But that's
what I'm saying. Giving the notice to cure is the same as giving the extension.
Exactly. So we're getting to the same position that if you give them the notice to cure, but if they have deemed to have commenced the cure, then in terms of lease, within that such 30-day period and thereafter diligently pursues such cure to completion, there shall be no default. So there is an out in the lease that provides that as long as they're working towards it, the lease won't determine that to be a true default.
Is there no deadline on that? There's no end period?
Not a 30-day.
Usually it's not, open-ended, yeah.
No, it just seems to be if they and thereafter diligently pursue such cure to completion.
But not to exceed 180 days.
Which is what they're asking.
No, I get that. I totally get that.
So
then it becomes good faith.
Yeah, and based on that, because it's good faith and we need to know, the airport authority needs to know whether they're diligently pursuing a cure to completion, which might be important to ask them to provide monthly updates. As soon as they get a notice of anything and pay for the file with these things, you can show the FAA that they are diligent.
We've done that for Mel.
This is what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
In the handout that we have, so I'm in agreement with everyone here. In the handout we have, we see that a number of the steps for approval by the city have been completed. The timeline was exceeded, so they have to resubmit a new site plan. Whose issue is this? I'm kind of confused. Is it their issue that the approvals from the city took so long that the timeline was exceeded? Or were they at fault for this? I think we need to be very, very cautious here, is what I'm saying. And based on the last minute's discussion, I don't want to say I'm confused, but who's on first, what's on second? That's what I'm trying to get to. They are making headway, but all of a sudden now that we've run into a roadblock. So whose roadblock is it, is what I'm trying to figure out.
Based on the terms of the lease, they had 90 days from when the Airport Authority Board accepted those preliminary plans, which was in September. This was September 8th.
I remember.
So they had 90 days, which was December 7th, December 8th. To come back with plans, with permits, excuse me. That's just the way the lease was written, whether we can, I think we all have opinions as to whether you can get a permit in any city in 90 days, right?
Yeah.
But that's what the lease says. And so in December, however, they have 180 days from those preliminary plans. If, from the board acceptance of the preliminary plans, if the city requires a site plan, which is what we reported, site plan amendment, which is what we reported in December. So that brought the date to last week, March 7th. And so that gave them a whole 6 months. But again, the question is whether the 6 months are they're in the lease, but whether they're
That's the
realistic
point
or
I'm
not.
bringing up.
Particular, you know, that, so which is why we had asked for, and as Ms. Ruskin referred to the due diligent effort, we wanted to see where they are in the process, because that way we could represent to you that indeed they didn't just wait till last Tuesday.
Right.
You
That's
know,
why I'm bringing
there
it
were,
up.
and so also the question that Mr. Nobles asked about what happened between September and December, I think that was also salient.
That's where I think we have a very foggy evaluation portion here. Personally, I'm not sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Gene.
I would like to ask the mayor if they ask at any time for an extension on the site plan. Things are generally granted, and I'd like to know if that process was ever.
Good question.
I hate to answer your first question before. So.
Can you hear that, Gene?
Yes, I can. And again, my understanding, the city generally will extend extensions if requested. That's the reason I asked.
We can check and.
Yeah.
If I may, it might be useful to make this decision to determine what they've done between September and December. As I said, we've got reports starting December 7th, but I think there's a bit of a mystery as to what happened when the preliminary plans were approved and they determined that they needed a new site plan. And we don't have that information from the applicant. So perhaps we can direct them, the board may want to consider tabling this to get more information from them as to that 3-month period. And if they could prepare some sort of report, I mean, I think your answers have, left us wanting. We don't know what went on, and it seems striking neither do you. So.
Yeah, I understand it and appreciate it. It is my experience that we would receive applications, receive elevations or site plans, there are the landscape plans that have to be conducted in the background. It's a domino effect. So if it's something that we didn't receive plans until, and I was a producer organization side, say for example, we received plans in October, hypothetically, usually for a first submittal, once you receive the first plan, it can take 2 months to prepare a package.
That we want to know when you indicated that you did meet with the city, did the preliminary plan review. What date was that meeting? If you have any emails to establish a bit of a timeline. I mean, the fact that you were here in September with the preliminary plan approval, how long did it take to get those final plans for submission? And at what point did you make that first reach out to the city to determine the next steps?
I'll review and I'll speak with others in our office as well that are part of that conversation.
Randy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a mystery to me, that 3 months.
Yeah.
So, but back to the dialogue between Mitch and Janice on the default and the cure period. It's, if I interpreted that conversation correctly, if we say no to the 6 months and then offer a cure, essentially we're granting an unlimited extension because the cure period has no time period associated with it. Is that a correct interpretation of?
There shall not be no default if they're diligently pursuing the cure. So the time frame really is dependent on what Premier is doing to resolve the cure. Now we have the third element is the city. So they are pursuing it to this, the city. The city then has their process where it has to be scheduled for P&Z Planning and Zoning Board for recommendation for the City Commission. So that's already, outside of Premier's hands. But I believe I'd like to know more information from them as
But to Randy's point, it's very subjective in the lease, the definition of diligently. So if you take 3 months to do step A and it's in, the client's court here, and it could have taken a week, how do you prove that? How do you make it clear that that is not diligence? If it takes 3 months and, at the city, and perhaps in other cities, it takes 1 week, there's no way to say that's not diligent, because once it leaves their hands, not in control, right? You cannot penalize them for that, but I do very much appreciate and understand the issue of not having a time frame around that. So it has to be cured within X number of days. That really seems like an error on our part in putting that lease together, but hindsight's always 20/20. Having said that, going forward, I don't know how you, final point, if we do as we have, looks like we're going down the road of getting a little more data, demonstrate to us what happened in that 30 days so that we can satisfy ourselves and the FAA that there was diligent activity between September and December when this thing was submitted, then we are de facto giving them another month anyway, right? And so there is a bit of an extension there. Hopefully that will make everybody a little bit more comfortable there.
So not the lawyer yet. The lawyer had off now, the board member happy, you can never take the law out of the lawyer. So, couple thoughts. First one is to initiate giving them the 30 days, we have to give them the default notice.
That's what I was, yeah.
Okay, that's the word. Okay, so here's a thought. I agree with you. I would like to assume that it's not there right now in this lease, that there is an end date to this, diligently pursue. Unfortunately, that is what I do a lot in my practice, so I'm particularly sensitive to that. However, I think there may be a solution here that can be a meet in the middle. If we give default notice now, if we give them the 6 months without a quid pro quo, that there be a change in the document somehow, in this amendment, that you don't have an open-ended default and cure period, then that's maybe something that can solve your needs and get us comfortable that we're doing our jobs. So we have a couple choices. One is we can give you default notice now, and then you can do your diligent repair and try to get it fixed. The city does play a part in that, and it runs on, and it'll take some time, and I guess we'll bang heads, and it'll be what it'll be down the road. And here we are 6 months later. That's one thing. Or we can say, we'll just take the stress out of this and give you your time that you requested now. But what we want is that I don't want to be here in 6 months and there's a default and we have this open-ended thingy going again, because that's going to make everybody here uncomfortable and very unhappy. So I'll give you 2 horses for 2 other horses. And the other horses I want is, I would be happy if we were to do an amendment that fixed that part of the lease. Said, you have an opportunity to cure, but it's not an open-ended opportunity to cure. Otherwise, we're going to be back here again, and this is going to keep going, and it's going to be respectfully, the tenant's position that he's doing everything he can. And we're going to say, if we don't agree with that, no, you're not. And he's going to get Howard, who's a seasoned litigator, and we're going to get your firm, and you guys are seasoned litigators. And it's just not going to be good. So I think in the spirit of cooperation and good faith, as lawyers like to toss those words around, I would say, let's consider that as a solution. If you guys, what do you think about that?
Can I just make one observation?
Yes.
To your first option, which was the default notice now. One of the things that does for us, I think, is to clearly demonstrate to FAA that we heard what they said in their last letter to us, that we can all read again, because I remember we all felt like we had our hands slapped, and it is a hand slap that could feasibly result in reduction of funds to the airport, or perhaps even taking funds back. I don't know. But by taking that action now, default, we can still allow them the opportunity to provide the additional data, and maybe then still your proposal kicks in for us to, assuming that we will get something that happened, you know, a list of what happened, and we're going to assume the positive of that it did demonstrate action and due diligence, you know, towards a goal. Then we come back and say, okay, you get the extension, but we said, hey, FAA, we heard you. We got the default notice and we have changed the lease. So all I'm saying is, can we combine your option 1 and 2, default notice, that checks one more box, and that's the FAA box.
So I think that is a good question. And I'll just again put my lawyer hat on here a second. Giving a default notice to the tenant could be problematic in a lot of ways. So we have to really think about that. So does your client. For its financing and other sort of things, which could be an issue. So that's one thing to consider. But if we can create the narrative that says, well, we'll give you the choice. Okay. We know, well, get us the data, get it to us quickly. And then based upon what we see, we don't have to give the default notice tonight. We can give it to them in a week or two. And if we were to give you a default notice, we'll give you, you know, A or B. You get a default notice, and then you got to show us good faith. You're trying to fix it. But if you don't want the default notice, here's our conditions. And one of the conditions would be to get it done in the 6 months. And and there would be potentially no extensions, or if there is a opportunity to throw upon a default, there is not an endless number of extensions. They have to end at some point. This can't continue forever. It's not good for Hamid. It's not good for the airport. It's not good for other tenants at the airport. It's not good for our community. It's not good for the 80-year-old guy sitting next to me. Okay. So he wants to be here and he wants to see the building.
That's exactly what you just said the first time. There's no difference in that. Tell me what it is, because what I hear is that
I'm giving them the choice versus us taking the choice. I've now kicked the ball to them in my second scenario.
I get that, but if we are still looking to check an FAA box,
right?
How does that do that if they say,
because in the narrative,
okay, you changed it to 180 days?
Because in the narrative that we give, we can make a very credible point that we followed what our obligations are here to enforce our lease, but taking into consideration the lease that we have and what we might ultimately end up with. We were able to craft a better solution by getting something in that lease that would give us some finite end to a default, which we don't currently have. So I think I'd rather have that in that lease than not have it in the lease.
The default option would still be there at some future point, and it would be less subjective.
Absolutely, and it would not be open-ended.
That I understand. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Gene.
Has the applicant indicated, if not so, I would ask, what they see the timeline to cure a default would be?
Howard, did you do that?
Sure. So why don't you go over the timeline, the site plan process?
So our timeline typically, at this submittal, based on the comments on it, be 2 submittals more than 2. At that point, the city will draft a staff report, and by their calendar, which they publish annually, it should take 2 months to send an application hearing, and then 1 month after that to the ultimately our that total together is approximately 6 months.
Howard had mentioned before that you said you thought it could be accelerated, expedited to get to 4 months, but you felt more comfortable asking for 6 just in case, because we all know that, you know, add 25% to everything, essentially. Okay, yes. So, Gene, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Randy, you're next.
Yeah, I mean, I like everything, Mitch, I like the thought, I needed the clarification that you did, Cheryl, because I too am concerned about the FAA and putting on the right base there. I like the idea of, some accountability for that 90 days from September to December. My question is, and again, I'm not making any accusations when I say this, but is there any type of due diligence that we can be doing regarding the timeline or anything? For example, I live in the city, just put a new generator in my house, had to have, of course, permits and everything issued through the city, it was all done by the general contractor. The first notice I got from the city on the permit process was, it had some little pointers, and one of the things was, if your contractor is blaming any delays on the city permitting process, please reach out to us, because it's a common tactic that is used for these guys getting behind. So, is there anything that we can be exploring on our own? Again, I'm not making any accusations, but just part of our due diligence, process, again, part of this is putting a good foot forward with the FAA to show that we're touching every base.
Yes, we could do that. We, in fact, you,
Some kind of
yes,
regular
you have
reporting.
you have two handouts. This one is ours, so this is what we had been tracking. So we saw the application in December, but we saw the workflow, but we hadn't seen what they actually had submitted for, couldn't see that. So we are tracking regularly, or looking into the city system regularly. We just didn't have a complete application. And to your point, we couldn't really see a whole lot between September and December, which is why we were asking.
Yeah.
Updates, when you know the application goes back in, and because you comments, and make sure you're fully in the loop moving forward.
That would be helpful.
So with monthly updates, is that too little? Bi-weekly updates, is that too often?
I think
don't know.
monthly, given the process that you've outlined to
At this
staff,
board,
and
at
then,
this board meeting?
well, do you want the premiere here or every month, or?
I think it comes to you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my.
Well, can I add something to that?
Yeah.
How about if we make it that monthly updates at a minimum, but within a couple business days after an event that takes place? How does that sound? Because if they get an event that takes place on the 5th of the month, I don't want to have to wait 26 days to get the monthly update. So let's get, when an event takes place in the process, you have to let us know within a couple business days, okay? And but no less than monthly, what's transpired during the preceding 30 days.
And also, please make note that it needs to be submitted 7 days prior to our board meeting. Yeah, so
Yes, we have.
otherwise you
have
could end up with a
I
58 days.
like what everybody's saying, but should we are we missing something in this process? Should we, give staff the authority to negotiate,
That will be.
a timeline?
Yeah, we're getting ready to try to craft
That
that
motion, when we craft the motion, I
Yeah.
think that's what
Yeah,
we'll put in.
okay.
And with regard to the city process, certainly we would participate in community advisory board. And we also receive, we're on the PWR review group, because anything that happens on and off the airport, surrounding the airport, we receive packets of that, but we hadn't seen any of that. They're not at that stage yet. And certainly we would look to go to the P&Z board as well whenever it goes up. So we would monitor the process as long as we're aware of those steps in the process to your point.
So, but is there not a first event per what you were saying that needs to take place, Mitch, with the option, or are we just?
Well, the first thing, as I've said, the notes about what I wrote, but in my head, what I see happening is there's a timeline in which you have to give us, hey, what happened in that 2.5 month period? That's for good faith, absolutely. If you don't give us that, then obviously it changes a lot. But I would say as a certainly a gesture of cooperation and compliance, good faith, within a week, 5 days, 3 days, what's real? Weeks. Okay, so you can get us everything that transpired between September, the site plan submission, our approval, whatever we went through here, and then obviously December 7th. Okay, that's the first thing. then we take about a week to review it. It shouldn't take that long, it may take a day or two. You're gonna look at it, you can see what you see, okay? If you then can communicate with us, all right, as compliant with all Florida laws, and then we can kind of make an assessment. You can make, in fact, you can make the assessment, the airport authority, and then report to us what your assessment is as to what was done and whether you have a comfort level or you don't have a comfort level. A comfort level, then the next step would be that, okay, we feel that you're acting in good faith, and we would recommend that there be a 6-month extension. However, there needs to be a change in the way that the default provision reads, and it needs to now have an end date to it. And, you know, your competent counsel can come up with that. You guys can negotiate with that, or I'm sure it's going to take place. Alternatively, if we don't have a comfort level, then we're going to put you in default. Okay? So you have a choice. You either can modify the lease and put that in there, or you're going to say, okay, we don't want to modify the lease, put us in default. Because then it puts you in default, and then you have to show the diligence that the lease requires of you to get the job done. And it should not take 6 months. It may take 5 months, it may take 4 months, it could take 6 months. But now the onus is going to be on you to show that you did perform actively and diligently to cure the default. That's all we can really do at this point, or we end up to each other.
I feel like otherwise we're in a corner. I mean, we are in a corner. I mean, yeah. Is it unreasonable to ask, okay, we want a timeline that takes us to August 2023, and how do we get there? Just to start, you know, what we don't want is a request for another extension because there's a problem with financing or whatever else could potentially delay this project to at least try to anticipate some problems, you know. I don't know, is that an unreasonable
That's a
request?
good question. I don't know, because I have not memorized these, but you know, so, but I don't think that there is a safe harbor for not getting financing to get that delay. You got to deliver. If you get your financing, you get it. You don't pay cash. There is nothing in our lease that gives them an out if they don't get financing to build this.
I think Howard said they had the financing.
No, I know they had financing, but what's their financing for? What's the financing for, Howard?
I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's for construction.
Okay. Can you provide some information? Are you guys comfortable giving the authority?
There was an estoppel certificate that the board approved in September,
Mhm.
you'll recall, for the purposes of refinancing an existing mortgage on the lease.
Okay. But refinancing is one thing,
That's
and additional money.
correct.
Right,
That's what-
exactly.
that's what
Is there a
came before the
commitment
board.
letter we
Not
can
that
look at?
Let me look at it.
If I may.
Yep.
Perhaps what we can suggest, and Janice will have to concur, is tabling for a month, and we bring back next month, based on what we have heard, an amendment that speaks to the points that have been made this evening. And if we can't come to terms on a lease amendment, then we would come with a recommendation to issue a notice of default at the April meeting.
Yeah, I think that's the only choice we have right now.
Would it be,
Let me try to.
can I ask a question?
Okay, yeah.
Would it be possible to kind of just change that process a little bit so that you can, well, right, okay. So this is what I think a little wrinkle to that would be, they'll give us the stuff in a month, in a week, you'll review it. You guys can send us a report, right? On what you see, and what your recommendations are. I would prefer to come into this meeting in a month being much more prepared than having the conversation. We'll have the conversation as we have to. But I know that the people on this board well enough after the years I've been on it to know that everybody wants to come in here and have read it and have done their own assessments, so that we're ready to have a very quick decision on what that's going to be based upon what we enter the room with that day, based on your recommendations supported by the facts that you guys gather and your interpretation of the meeting, etc. So that kind of puts a little bit of time on you to, and Hamid, the tenant, to go through this stuff and have a dialogue about whether, you know, you show up and say, well, we negotiated with Hamid and he's willing to do this, and we're okay with changing the lease to do an amendment with this change to the default provision, or Hamid said, absolutely no way, we're not going to do it. Okay, so if that's not the case, we can't find ourselves doing this forever, and we're going to go with plan A. So that's what I would like to see when I come here.
So just so I'm clear, and follow that logic, the only choice for the client is either they agree to default and there are no timelines around completion dates or anything else, and no amendment to the lease. So it's either you amend the lease, and in that amendment are the timelines that we just described. So 180 days to cure or something.
Yes, with an additional default provision change.
Yes, I assumed that that was kind of the same thing. Or if they say, I don't want to do that because that I just don't want to do it, then they are choosing default.
I don't think we have a choice as a board.
I'm
to
fine
do
with
anything
that. I
else
just
but
want to
do
be
that.
sure
Yeah.
that there is not a way around that.
I don't think so, and I think it
Because
solves.
doing
you guys
this
are
every
looking
6
forward to.
months
No, that's.
after doing it
yeah.
for 10 years is
20 years. Right.
it's just, yeah.
And I think, I'm
Only 10 for
hopeful,
me.
I'm hopeful that Hamid can understand this as well as I'm trying to articulate it, so that he understands, okay, well, he's not giving up a lot, but he's getting what he wants, essentially, and it's fair to us to give us the opportunity to know what's coming, or if it's not, and he's getting an extension with a little bit of a quid pro quo, so to speak.
Yeah.
That would be my.
Plus, I'm glad you were here, because I think tonight you got a good feeling of the temperature of the board.
Sure.
And you'll take it back to Hamid.
That's very insightful.
Thank
All right, let me try to see if I can,
you.
for the purpose of the minutes, just to kind of articulate, make sure we're all on the same page before we go forward. So what we're talking about is tabling this matter till the next meeting and giving instructions or requiring Premier to provide us with their activity report from September to December of 2021, plus financing details within 1 week from today. And then we're directing the airport staff to review that information to establish good faith and make a recommendation to this board if they feel it's warranted to extend the deadline with a modification to the default clause to add certainty to the timeline of the
Cure period.
cure period. That's a great way to say it.
And we
Does
authorize
that kind of get everything?
staff and council to
Right.
determine.
And
Yeah,
if-
staff and council can make a recommendation.
Right, and if that can be
Also-
negotiated, then we can grant the extension.
At next meeting.
Right, if it doesn't get negotiated within this 30-day period, then you show up and you basically, you try to negotiate, it, that's okay within the 30-day period. What I don't want to be in a position to do, and I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody here, including Gene, and the others that were here, I'm sure would be on the
Yes,
same
oh, yeah.
page, and I'm confident, would be, we don't want to come here and go, okay, now take the next 30 days to negotiate an extension period to this, because at that point, we've accomplished nothing that we want to accomplish.
We just
So,
push it down the road.
yeah, we will make.
And
a
the road's
decision.
ending.
Yeah,
Right.
we come back in a month, either there will be a negotiated deal to do an extension, or there will be no deal to do an extension, in which case we're not gonna have a choice but to, live up to the fiduciary that we have and enforce the terms of the lease.
And that period is September, right, for the original
September,
request, so we're
Right.
not moving an additional month. It doesn't-
However, to Randy's point, and maybe it's, if we have enough time to accomplish this in a month, if not, we can make it conditional in option 2, is that we see some type of, it's gone now, to make sure I understood it, but some type of timeline, milestones between now and our deadline of 2023, August,
Yeah.
for certificate of occupancy. What are milestones? Give us, assuming that everything goes as planned, what are the milestones so that we don't come up 3 months before this and go, oh my gosh, we should have known 6 months ago that there's no way anybody could ever meet that timeline. So a project timeline for the whole thing, Randy's point about 10 minutes.
Yeah, you guys should be able to do
And
that.
so
Certainly
I'm
these
just saying
guys
that
here.
needs to be in our request.
And the fact that Clara and the staff are going to be feeding us information
Right.
as you get it and analyze it.
Right.
Yes, that way it'll
And
keep
you
us
can
all
work out what is a reasonable.
trying to get
timeframe
this
for
thing
that.
done in a positive way.
So I'll look to council, do we need a motion to that effect or just a consensus of the board?
I think we're gonna need a motion just in order to direct the executive director to make a determination based on the report, and also so we can start negotiating. I think we need actual board motion.
And Claire, you can do the wordsmithing, you got the general idea of what we have. Wordsmithing of this motion, or are you gonna make me read it again?
Yeah, I think you did a great job, and we'll refer to the tape.
Yeah. Go to the videotape.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to table this with direction
So
to
moved.
the staff and council.
I'll say.
All right, Mel made the motion, Mitch second. Any other questions or comments for the team here or somebody else?
I just wanted to clarify from Premier, I know you talked about the city's gonna allow you to go for some permits. Are we talking development permit? Are we talking building permits?
This would be engineering.
So this would be an engineering permit if you have to require as well as a building permit. Typically, if you have to. Typically, you're not able to really go with those permits. Well, special circumstances, they will let everything run concurrently after waste to the applicant.
Okay.
Working on that
really
concurrently
important,
would go a long way to showing.
That's very important, because the lease specifies building permit.
That would be outside of our, our full control. But in situations like this, I'm confident that we can have this productive conversation.
That was you.
That are happening. So we'll also update on that conversation.
And I think to Mr. Randy's point, if I could add, any support that you need from us at the staff level or from anyone here on the board with the city interaction, just please let us know. Be happy to participate in that.
Very good.
Let's get this done.
All right. All right,
Okay.
do we have a vote?
Any other questions? No, we're on the question phase. Okay. All in favor of the tabling with direction to staff and council and Premier?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, James. All right, passes.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. You got a lot of work to do.
All right, let's get this done.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go. I-Star Florida, number B, 8B. I-Star Florida 2015 Cinemas Ground Lease Estoppel and Agreement. And Claire, you're gonna handle that one? Who handles that?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Yes, as stated in the background material, we received a request from I-Star, which, as you know, is our prime lessee on the Cinemark property. They are our lessee and they sublease to Cinemark. And you heard us mention the estoppel that was requested in the fall for Premier. This is similar. I-Star has some loans on the property. They're looking to rework some of those loans. So they have asked for the airport authority to authorize this estoppel certificate, which, as you may recall, is basically a snapshot in time of where the lease currently is, that there are no defaults or notices of default known to either the airport authority or the tenant. And it states what they're paying rent currently, et cetera. So it just signals to the prospective lender that the lease is in good standing. We've reviewed the certificate as has legal counsel, and we concur and we recommend that the airport authority board accept and authorize the estoppel.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion. to
Motion.
authorize the estoppel.
Second.
Motion and a second. Okay, any questions on the estoppel? It's just allowing them to see financing, right?
Correct.
Okay, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Gene. Motion approved, thank you. Next item is Atlantic Aviation Special Event. I think it's a change in time, if I recall reading that. Travis, you gonna handle this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is just informational that previously approved special event taking place at the Bears Hangar to benefit the Donald Klein Jewish Academy was supposed to take place on February 5th. Due to overcautious on COVID, they have rescheduled the event for March 26th. All the other previously approved details are the same, parking plan, security, that type of thing.
So is there any action needed, or this just? for
This is just an informational rescheduling. So everything's already approved and no details other than the date of change.
Thank you, Travis. Next is item 9, Executive Director and Staff Reports. Let's start with the noise abatement operations summary for the month of February. And Robert Abbott will make the presentation. Robert.
Hi, good evening. My name is Robert. I'm operations and coordinator. So for you is the operations and noise abatement report for the month of February. As you can see, we had 6,614 operations, which is an increase of 3% from the operations of February 2021. Deliveries of jet fuel of 23%, and it was down 37% in nat gas deliveries from last year. That's again just the fuel deliveries. So we did have 8 different households file complaints in the month. Again, most of these are on the normal runway 5 arrivals. We had a couple of overflights as well, and one departure. You can see the customs. We had 59 aircraft for customs in 19 different countries. So 19 different countries break down with those. We also had 47 active hours clearance, and 26 of these were on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. The facility is normally closed to traffic. So that concludes the operations report. If you have any questions, I can answer.
Any questions? No. Thank you. Appreciate that. Good report. Next is our corporate identity and community engagement program update. And
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I didn't have a chance to let you know ahead of my time. Vanessa had an emergency at home and had to leave. So I can either go through the PowerPoint. It's exactly what is in your background, or so.
You got the slides?
You got it? Oh, that way we're still at customs.
Okay. On my screen, we're not. We'll just delete that entirely. We're not.
Well, we can go through it on.
All right, what's in our?
Oh, yes, while he works
reports?
that out. The very, on page number 2, you see the website analytics, visitor traffic. This is for the home page. Here we go.
Okay.
Thank you. And you can see activity. There was a spike in February. We're not quite sure why. Maybe the change of time for the board meeting made it permanent or so. We're not quite sure. But we are seeing some increase. Some slight increase in our traffic this quarter compared with previous quarter. And one of the strategies that we're working towards implementing also is when we do social media or when we do other kinds of publications, try to drive traffic back to the website, because there's a lot of really good information in there. And as you know, we try to continue to build that content as well, so we can continue to drive traffic to our website.
And yeah, no technical difficulties.
There we go.
Drop it off. No. There we go.
There we go. Social media analytics. This is impressions and engagement. They were down this period compared to last year. We at sometime in 2020, I believe it was, we no longer had paying for the impressions and the posts. So we do see that sort of leveled off quite a bit. And you can just see sort of the spikes throughout the month, the last couple of months of the analytics. Vanessa does a really great job of pushing out events and information on the airport. And I think Travis's tortoise rescue probably trended. That was one of our highlights for the last quarter. That was the smallest tortoise I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So some of the key events that we highlighted that did some extra traffic on the social media. There's some pictures here on the PowerPoint presentation. February 14, Valentine's Day post with bringing donuts out to all of our tenants. Of course, the tenant appreciation treat delivery and the Toys for Tots. Those were the biggest kind of impressions for that quarter. In terms of our community outreach, Vanessa has got some summaries here. We had a CPR and AED class for staff and tenants. We also had several pilots who based their aircraft here attend, which I thought was pretty great. And some of our best volunteers and employees attended the legislative fly-in in Tallahassee. And then there's just a rundown of some of the meetings that we've attended, particularly some of the presentations that we've made in the industry, as well as some of the local presentations. Coming soon, you'll see some information on a food drive and a volunteer opportunity. These are some very successful events. We always get a large turnout among tenant employees. It's a great opportunity for us to engage with them in meaningful ways and giving back to some of the people out in the community. And Vanessa and Rob have also been working on updates to our noise abatement program, including development of a video that would be informative for people out in the community, as well as pilots on the elements of our noise abatement program. So they're working on that right now.
Great, thank you, very good. Are there any other public comment cards at this point? Okay. At this point, we'll ask the board members, not many other issues or items you want to talk about? Well, everybody, Cheryl, you did? Okay. Jean, you have any comments or questions at the end of the meeting?
I have a question of regarding the airport highway. I appreciate all the nice trees I see out there, but I noticed on the west side that there are no curbs. Is that intended, or is that something that will come eventually? And I ask that because of the trees.
I think it's to do with the lack of space to do so. Drainage was also a factor. And I think it also has to do with our property line, our property boundaries. And
There is some curbing on the west side where
on the
it gets too narrow to add some.
Right.
It
There, yeah, on the
changes.
north side where we own that property, Mr. Folden, just south of the Spanish River, down by Atlantic. Down by the Atlantic, the entrance to Atlantic and further south, there is curbing on both sides. And where you don't see curbing, it's either we did not have enough space or we don't own that property.
All right. The only reason I ask is FDOT's rules regarding heavy landscaping with non-curved areas.
Right, and you'll remember again, part of the big challenge for us is the property boundaries. We have added landscaping to the full run of the west side of the road, but we don't own anything further south of approximately the signature flight support entrance.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Apropos of that, the comment about the curb, some of us on the board may have received an email from a resident regarding bike lanes, pathways. Can you extrapolate on that a bit, just for the record?
Certainly, an email I think several of you may have received, if
I
not
didn't
all
get
of you. And yes, I think, yeah, I know Mr. Folden, you received one as well, Ms. Bud, from a resident in the local community who expressed concern that there was no bike lane as part of the project, and the perception that the focus is exclusively on automobile traffic. And so I did respond to the individual and explain that, again, the limitations of the project, given the property boundaries that are airport property versus the city property. If you'll again remember, the city property goes from Glades Road, city portion of the road, from Glades Road to about the signature entrance. Then that becomes airport property, and then it goes from there on to just south of the Spanish River Bridge, and then it's city property again. So we did approach the city early on in the project with this notion, this concept for complete streets for the entire length of Airport Road. And we were hoping to be able to address this northern portion that intersects with Spanish River as well, because of sort of that awkward connection and intersection there. But we don't own those properties, so we went to the city to see if they could adopt a similar project. We even met with the Transportation Planning Agency, the FPO, as you may know it as, to see about a joint grant application to help the city fund their portions of the road. However, the city prioritized other traffic projects within the city boundaries and not this one. However, we did make our portion of the road wide enough to accommodate a bike lane. So all that would be required in the future is in order to connect our portion to any future bike lane would be for us to add the paint, the striping, the pavement markings to allow that.
Plus also, the sidewalk is a little bit wider also.
Where we
As
could,
an alternative.
correct, where
I
we.
mean, that's what I've seen.
In the
Correct.
time, for the time being.
Yeah, for the time
So
being.
that-
I can't imagine there's a lot of pedestrians
Right.
on that side.
Well, we certainly want to encourage it, which is why we made those types of pedestrian improvements. But there's a connectivity issue, obviously, with bike lanes particularly, and even with sidewalk.
Yes, sure.
Was the resident receptive to your response? I mean, there was a tone of,
Like there was.
yeah,
I think it ended with thanks for nothing.
thanks for
Yeah,
nothing. So,
I'm glad I didn't get it.
did that change a bit with the explanation, or was?
I emailed,
Was she
I
not so
responded
receptive?
earlier today. I didn't get to it yesterday, but I haven't heard back. I may have a response to the email this afternoon since I've been away from my desk. But I didn't invite her to ask any other questions and certainly would be able to provide any additional information that she would be interested in having. But we couldn't agree more. That was always the vision, was to have both pedestrian and bike access improvements that would connect to the El Rio Trail and any bike lanes down off of.
Remember, initially, one of our visions was that it would be one of those exercise trails.
Right.
You know, you start down here and
Right.
do this, and you
Yeah.
can run, and you can do
Right.
12 pull-ups and push-ups, you know, like a little mini park, and it's
We had to scale back.
best laid
some of-
plans.
I think we can still look to do that, Ms. Bud, on the sidewalk that we added, where there's opportunity to do that as a next project, we can certainly look to do that.
Because with the trees, I mean, somebody said, well, who would walk down there? But it's starting to look really good.
Oh,
We certainly want to
Yeah.
encourage that. I think that was always the goal.
Right.
Good.
It could be a nice
Yeah,
walk.
thank you for bringing that up, by the way, because I had received an accident particular, and I was like, please run with this. So one thing, and I'm sorry to bring it up, and you asked me before, but just out of curiosity, and we can talk about it next month, okay? Don't have to talk about it now, but I'm sure we'd all be interested as to the observation area.
Beat me to it.
And
Beat me to it.
I'm a little faster than you.
He's
I got
pretty
you on
strong.
one
He can,
thing.
like, punch it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, I'd just like to hear about that a little more.
I can give you a very quick,
Okay, go ahead.
today, I think we may have mentioned it at one of our last project update meetings. We're still waiting to hear back from FAA on the no-build scenario for the master plan, you know, where we don't have to relocate the runway. And so that's because this would be considered an obstruction. Based on those new design criteria, we can't add a new obstruction. So when they gave us that information, we had to put that project on hold.
Oh, okay.
So it is still on hold. We're waiting to hear. In fact, I have on my calendar for tomorrow, I ping them every month. Tomorrow's my day to ping them on where they are with the response to our inquiry regarding the no build, which is the direction that we had been going towards for a while.
And once that's finished, it's gonna be a draw.
It's a beautiful
People looking
design.
forward to it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay, any other business to come before the board? You all set? Okay. Our next meeting is April 20th, 2022 at 5 PM right here in the conference room. And I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion second. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
I'd like to say, first of all, I apologize for keeping